Alright, students, this is Sir Benjamin, and this time we shall be talking about power sharing, which is chapter 2 in political science, since the first chapter have been removed by the MBSC as per the new syllabus due to the lockdown caused by the pandemic COVID-19. After this brief definition and explanation, it will be followed by an assignment in the form of a quiz. Political Science, Chapter 2, Power Sharing. To understand the significance of power sharing better, let us take the case of two countries, Sri Lanka and Belgium. Sri Lanka, with its varied populations of 2 crores, is an island country. It has 74% of Sinhala-speaking people who comprise mostly of Buddhist. Out of the remaining population, 18% speak Tamil. This group can be further subdivided into Indian Tamils, who formed 5%, and Sri Lankan Tamils, who comprised 13% and are concentrated in the north and east of the country. The Indian Tamils are the descendants of the migrants Indian workers who were plantation workers in Sri Lanka. These 18% Tamilians include both Hindus and Muslims. Christians make up the remaining 7% of the population. Sri Lanka used the idea of majoritarianism to handle this cultural diversity. After gaining independence in 1948, the Sinhalese majority attempted to remodel Sri Lanka as Sinhalese nation-state. In 1956, the Official Language Act, popularly known as the Sinhala Only Act, was enacted. Special policies supporting the Sinhala aspirant for university and government posts were created. Buddhism was made the national religion. These moves augmented the sense of separation in Sri Lankan Tamils, and they felt they were denied political and social equality. Thus, the Sri Lankan Tamils began an upheaval with the objectives of acknowledging Tamil as an official language and to bring about the social and political equality, regional sovereignty. By the 1980s, this upheaval grew into a demand for free Tamil Elam or state in the northern and eastern parts of the country. This led to a prolonged civil war, causing widespread disorder and extreme hindrance to the development of Sri Lanka. Let us now see how Belgium handled diversity. Belgium is located in northwest Europe. It shares its borders with the Netherlands, France, Luxembourg and Germany. Out of the total populations of around 1 crore, 59% speak Dutch and live in the Flemish region. 40% speak French and are settled in the Wallonia region, and 1% speak German. In contrast, the capital city, Brussels, has 80% French-speaking people and the remaining 20% speak Dutch. The French-speaking majority in Belgium were wealthy and the Dutch-speaking community hated this, leading to tensions during the 1950s and 60s. This friction was highest in Brussels, where the Dutch-speaking community was a minority. Unlike Sri Lanka, Belgium took an approach of accommodation. The number of Dutch and French-speaking ministers were made equal in the central government. A separate government was established in the capital city, Brussels, with equal representation of French and Dutch-speaking people under the conditions that neither of them could take a unilateral decision. Powers were shared with the state government, which was considered as equal to the central government. The third government, called the community government, elected by the community members, dealt with the cultural, educational and language associated concerns of the community. The accommodation approach might look different, but it has been successful in evading linguistic differences within the country. Power sharing is always desirable as it lessens conflicts, it ensures stability and unity, and enhances citizens' participation. There are two reasons that make power sharing in a democracy desirable. These are prudential and moral. The first reason of the power sharing is prudential, where the constancy of the political order is increased by reducing the clashes between the social group. For example, as we've studied in the earlier module, Belgium prudently applied the policy of accommodation to ensure stability amongst various cultural groups. Did you know that the violent crisis that had paralyzed the African country of Zimbabwe in recent years was brought to an end by a prudent power sharing deal between the president of the country and his political rivals? They formed a coalition to bring an end to the crisis. The second reason is moral, which emphasizes that the very active power shares is valuable. It forms the basis of democracy. In a democracy, power sharing is important not only to those on whom it is exercised, but also to those who exercise it. Under moral power sharing, the government becomes legitimate, responsive, and responsible towards the people, as they are the source of political power. Power sharing can take many forms, but there are four most common ones. And the first one is the power sharing among the different organs of the government, such as the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. This is called the horizontal distribution of power. Each organ which holds parallel position checks the other, resulting in a balance of power among different institutions. This is also called a system of checks and balances. Power sharing in governments can also be at different levels. This can be national, state, or the regional government. It can also be self-governing bodies like the panchayats in the rural areas and the municipalities in the urban areas. These higher and lower divisions of power is also called the vertical divisions of power. Power sharing in India is not limited to the government, but also present among different social groups, including linguistic and religious groups. In our country, many alienated groups are given reservations in the governments. Under these reservations, minority and socially weaker sections are accommodated. Women are also represented accordingly. The reserved constituency in India is an example of this form. Power sharing is also common among political parties, pressure groups, and movements. When a party fails to get a majority in the legislature, different parties come together to form a coalition government and share power. The UPA government elected in 2009 headed by Dr. Manmohan Singh was a result of a coalition of different political parties. In addition, pressures and interest groups directly or indirectly influence the government in the decision-making process. Traders, farmers, and industrial workers also can form special interest groups. They have a share in the power, by participating in governmental committees or affecting policies through movements. For the conclusion, I would like to add one question and answer which will be important for the board examination. And the question is, explain what is implied by a hung parliament and a coalition government. The answer is, a hung parliament is the expression to describe a state of a parliament when no single political party has an absolute majority of seats in the parliament. Such a government may be referred to as a minority government. In 1989, for the first time in the history of Indian politics, no single party was able to get the required majority to form the government in the elections, which resulted to a hung parliament. Hence, a party that wished to form the government would have to enter into alliance with the other political parties to form the government. The government thus formed with the help and support called a coalition government. The coalition government are common in countries whose parliament is elected by proportional representation, with several organized political parties often represented. Thank you.